Most fantasy players are currently sleeping on these rookies, but you are not most fantasy managers. And the players I'm going to be going over, I'm going to be diving into their ADP, their athleticism scores, and how well they produced in college. And I'm even going to dig a little deeper as far as the current rosters that they are on, as well as the coaching schemes that they are going to also be featured in. And with that, let's kick it off in Denver with RJ Harvey, running back drafted out of UCF. Last season, this kid was absolutely phenomenal. He racked up over 1,400 rushing yards with 25 touchdowns and nearly 300 receiving yards. Now, that is workhorse level production, and someone that was extremely efficient too with all that, averaging a very impressive 6.8 yards per carry. And that's just not solid. That's explosive and crazy efficient. When we look at his 40-yard dash and all his athleticism scores, you see here that he had a 4.40 40-yard dash with a burst score that put him in the 88th percentile and a speed score well over 109. Now, I want to also dive in a little bit deeper into Sean Payton and how much they love this kid. You're seeing all these different reports, and I actually want to focus in on one specific quote that I found when I was doing research for this video. And the quote reads as follows. It says that there's a lot that the Broncos can do, quote, to really suit his strengths. And we know how athletic he is. We just went over that, but we also see that even in college, he was someone that was a dual threat running back, someone that could not only be efficient as a runner, but also effective as a pass catcher. Historically, Sean Payton has been a wizard in being able to utilize running backs, especially the ones that are dual threat backs. And when you just look at here the historical data, it says here that running backs accounted for an average of 31.1% of the team's receptions per season under Sean Payton, with peaks such as 4.25% in 2006 and 38.3% in 2013. Now, because of how versatile Harvey is, his skill set aligns perfectly with what Payton's preference is for his running backs. And I'm gonna actually want to dive in a little bit deeper into his college stats, and these stats will specifically speak on how versatile he is. We already went over, of course, how well he was able to run as a rusher for UCF, but look at this right here: 19 receptions for 238 yards, 1 touchdown. And same thing in his 2004 season, he had 20 receptions for 267 yards. And I think that when you're looking also at where he's currently going, I know that he is someone that in rookie drafts, he's going late first round, if you're lucky, early second. And right now when you're looking at ADP, I think even in redraft leagues, he's someone that should be there available in the middle rounds, but someone that I love to actually go target. You combine, of course, what we believe will be another step forward for this offense with Bo Nix now entering his second season. You have the Sean Payton effect, and you have all these reports on how much the team is going to be utilizing RJ Harvey. He is an easy slam dunk for me. Now, this other running back I want you to target, and I just want to preface, I'm going to butcher a lot of these names, but this next running back should be a solid one that you should be targeting, and that's going to be Rashul Tutton, running back out of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, when we look at his collegiate career, totally butchered that, but when you look at his collegiate career over the last 2 seasons at Virginia Tech, Tutton amassed 2,022 rushing yards, had 25 rushing touchdowns, along with 50 receptions and 320 yards, and had 4 receiving touchdowns. Now, I want to focus in on here for a little bit on his athletic profile. He ran a 4.32 40-yard dash, putting him in the 100th percentile. That's like all-time rank. He also had a speed score of he had 118.3, putting him in the 98th percentile. His burst score was also up there at 133.9, putting him in the 97th percentile. And I also dug a little bit deeper into his college stats, and his efficiency numbers were actually pretty impressive as well. He had a average yards per carry in his collegiate career at 6.4%, putting him in the 84th percentile all time, as well as a college target share of 10.2%, putting him in the 80th percentile. And the main takeaway is that, of course, he's very athletic, but he's been able to utilize that athleticism as well as that explosiveness to be very efficient, and I believe that'll carry very well into his NFL career. Now, when we're looking at the Jacksonville backfield, I know Travis Etienne, someone that we had high hopes on last season, but just absolutely was involved in a dumpster fire there with Jacksonville. And though he's very talented, I still have my reservations. And a lot of it is because of the new regime that is going to be taken over. You have Doug Peterson, who was let go last season, and you bring in a new coaching regime. How much will they still have invested in Travis Etienne is up in the air. And Tank Bigsby, someone that I thought was also going to be doing well last season, was just someone that struggled with ball security. And I mean, he could be in the mix for some kind of competition, but I believe that Titans' skill set should position him to be a very valuable asset in this backfield, and someone that I think that new coach Liam Cohen will be able to really leverage in this offense. And speaking of Liam Cohen, I do want to dive a little bit deeper as far as what he's been able to do as a coach previously. He had a top 5 team as far as yards per game with 399.6, scoring at 29.5, passing yards per game at 250.4, and rushing yards at 149.2. Cohen, his offensive schemes tend to utilize running backs in a very effective way. You saw, of course, that with Bucky Irving last season, and at times also with Rachaad White. I believe that this will sit really well with Titans' skill set. I mean, we saw how well he was able to produce in college. We know how athletic he is, and I believe that when you combine also where he's going in drafts, like right now in rookie drafts, I know there's still a few that are coming down the pipeline, but if you're already finishing up, rather, if you're still in a draft that is exclusively for your rookies, Titan is someone that's usually going mid-second round, but if you see him, of course, they're available. He's someone that I believe that's worth taking. And when you're looking at how he is stacking up as far as ADP goes in redraft, he's going in the much later rounds of redrafts. I mean, I'm doing mock drafts right now, and of course, still very early, and that can shift once, of course, training camp comes into play and we get closer to the season. And I say all this to say that I believe that at the end of the day, I think Titan is going to bring a ton of value in fantasy and someone worth targeting. And please excuse that dad joke. And speaking of dad jokes, Father's Day is just around the corner, which is why I want to talk to you about Dad Gang. And I think that if you're looking to get your dad a special gift, there's no better place to go to than dadgang.co. They have the best Dad Gang gear as far as hats. They've been recently featuring t-shirts, and when you use promo code Ivan39078, you get yourself a special 15% off. Now listen, they have a great selection, and I urge you, get the gifts early because these things fly quick, but they have the best customer service and a brand that I love to get behind. Once again, use promo code Ivan39078 to get 15% off that gift for your dad, or even if it's for that grad that is right now celebrating a special moment in their life. Shout out to Dad King, who is a sponsor of this show, but let's get back to the video. And I want to talk about wide receiver Kyle Williams out of the New England Patriots. What makes Williams very interesting when we analyze him as a prospect, he had a 5-year college career, but each of those seasons he was very productive consistently, and he began actually in UNLV back in 2020, and for the most part very modest. He had 426 yards his first season there with 35 receptions, but you can see the big jump in his production once he transferred over to Washington State in 2023. In the 2023 season, he had 61 receptions for 843 yards and 6 touchdowns. All were career highs at the time, but then he took it to a whole different level that following season with 70 receptions, 1,198 yards, and 14 touchdowns. And we saw also how athletic he was when we look at this screenshot here. And when we're looking at how well he did in his collegiate career, we also want to analyze how athletic he is. And he had a pretty impressive 40-yard dash at 4.40. But I actually want to dive a little bit deeper into how well he was as far as his production and how well he was able to actually separate among his competitors in his collegiate career. And when you see it over here, he had an 82.5% success rate versus man coverage, and this actually speaks to how well he was able to create separation as well as winning one-on-one matchups. And he also had an 83.3% success rate versus zone coverage, which speaks to how well he was able to find spots to really exploit zone defenses, and he was able to do that very effectively in his collegiate career. And I think that we still have seen that he is someone that can improve in his route running, but he is effective enough right now as a raw talent to be effective. And when you look at how well this New England Patriots offense has been groomed to not only improve on the O-line, but they also added Stephon Diggs in the offseason, and I believe that all this is going to help Williams produce even more. Now, when we're looking a little bit deeper into Williams here, we can see here that he lined up for the most part on the outside with 1,070 snaps in the outside, but he also did have 202 snaps in the slot, and he did have a catch rate of 69.3%. He actually ranked 21st nationally, and this showcased, of course, how reliable his hands were and how consistent he was in being a secure target for his quarterbacks. He also was very impressive when it came to YAC, which is yards after his catch. He had 590 yards after the catch, which actually ranked him 4th among qualified FBS receivers, and this just speaks to how well he's able to generate yards past the reception. And another stat I found that was really impressive too was his YAC per reception being at 8.4 yards after the catch per reception, and he actually ranked 2nd nationally in and this not only indicates, of course, how efficient he is, but it's also able to speak on how elusive he is, as well as how much of a successful playmaker he also can be as well. And when you think about, of course, where he's going to be going with New England, you already have Stephon Diggs there, who should be the alpha wide receiver 1. I know Jalen Polk was somewhat of a disappointment as well last season, but I believe that with Josh McDaniels now making his return as the OC, and he's had a very successful history of really leveraging wide receivers, whether they're ones that predominantly play on the outside or in the slot. I think Williams is in a very good scenario as well. Current ADP with rookie drafts, he tends to go around the late 2nd round, and someone that can even be found in the middle part of the 2nd round as well in rookie drafts, and someone that I believe will be a great target even in redraft leagues to be a good stash for you. Of course, the more that we get to see how New England will be utilizing him, I think Williams will be someone that is going to be very intriguing to keep a very close eye on. Someone that we're going to talk about next is going to be Jaden Blue, who is a running back out of the Dallas Cowboys. Now, as a Philadelphia Eagles fan, I'm a little bit reluctant talking about a Cowboy, but I'm just kidding. When we actually look at how well he actually did in college, let's go ahead and get into it. In 2022, he didn't really have much. He had really limited action. Only had 15 carries for 33 yards, but we can see the action really pick up in 2023 when he had 65 carries for 398 yards with an average of 6.1 yards per carry with 3 touchdowns, 14 receptions, and 135 yards. And we see the true breakout last season in 2024 with 134 carries for 730 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, had 8 touchdowns, had 42 receptions and 368 yards and 6 touchdowns. And over his collegiate career, Blue showcased continual improvement and someone that really was a standout. And I think he became a really strong contributor in both the running and the passing game for his offenses. And it really begins with how athletic he is. And when we're looking at his player profiler setup over here, we can see here he ran a 4.38 40-yard dash. He had a strong speed score at 106.5, as well as a burst score that put him in the 111.7 range. But then I also want to focus more so on his landing spot in Dallas. And unfortunately for Javonte Williams as well as Miles Sanders, these are guys that are a little bit long in the tooth compared to Blue. Players that unfortunately that have been riddled with injuries and inefficiencies. Javonte is someone who's been banged up with ACL injuries, and then we also saw how ineffective Miles Sanders was with Carolina last year. And what does give me optimism when it comes to Blue is gonna be his new head coach, Brian Schottenheimer. And Schottenheimer is someone who has a very strong history in utilizing running backs in the passing game. I also want to exclusively talk about how well Schottenheimer was able to use running backs in the past, and specifically Chris Carson. Chris Carson was one of my favorite running backs in fantasy a few years ago, and he had some pretty strong finishes as far as fantasy goes when he was playing under Schottenheimer. You can see here that he was the RB19 in 2020, he was the RB12 in 2019, and he was the RB15 in 2018. So very solid production there. And During that time, Schottenheimer had a run to pass split ratio of 45% to 55%. And with Blue having a skill set that's able to cater to not only the running game, but also be utilized in the passing game, I believe that he's going to be very, very efficient and someone that is going to be a great target to add and someone that could be easily slept on. And actually recently, I actually moved a 2026 late round pick for Blue, as well as another veteran piece on my contending team, being that I just won a championship. Little quick flex there. However, Blue is someone that when you talk about how athletic he is, the skill set that he has, and plus you talk about the landing spot coupled with a new head coach that will really cater to his skill set, Blue is a slam dunk ad and someone that you should be targeting as well in fantasy football for this upcoming 2025 season. And this last player that I think people have been sleeping on that you should be targeting is going to be Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of the Houston Texans. Higgins is another prospect that really showed significant growth throughout his collegiate career. You can see here when he first started off in 2022, he was in Eastern Kentucky, had 58 receptions for 757 yards and 10 touchdowns. And then when he transferred to Iowa State, this is where you can see everything turned around. He had 53 receptions for 983 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaging 18.5 yards per catch. And then in 2024, last year, he had 87 receptions for 1,100 plus yards, 9 touchdowns, while averaging 13.6 yards per catch. All these stats actually were able to have him rank 7th all-time in receiving yards there for the Cyclones in Iowa State. He also is very athletic. He actually recorded a 4.47 40-yard dash. He had a speed score of 111.6, putting him in the 94th percentile with a burst score of 130.3, as well as a catch radius of 10.33, putting him in the 94th percentile. And I mean, we can see, of course, that these metrics speak to how gifted he is athletically, but I also think that it just shows how effective he can also be, because he reminds me a lot of Allen Robinson. This is a wide receiver that had a lot of success in fantasy when he was with the Bears. And yeah, when I see Higgins, I see a lot of Robinson in him and someone that could also be effective. Now, when we're looking at his landing spot, the Houston Texans, we know that Nico is the clear wide receiver 1 for that offense. And unfortunately, Tank Dell had that very unfortunate injury last season that's going to potentially set him out for most of this upcoming season. Now, the Texans did add some depth after losing Stephon Diggs last year to the Patriots by adding Christian Kirk via trade for a 2026 7th round pick. But Kirk is 28 years old, someone that's not going to be, in my opinion at least right now, making a real threat to taking targets away out of Higgins. But I think that nonetheless, when you see that the new OC, Nick Caley, is someone that was just coming out of the Los Angeles Rams system, I mean, when you couple, of course, not only the landing spot, but the athletic ability that he has, as well as the production that he was able to have in college, I think that Higgins is someone that is going to be a clear, easy add for your fantasy rosters in 2025, and someone that is right now currently going within the 2nd round, maybe even the 3rd round on rookie drafts. But of course, I'm also trying to tailor all this for the redraft players as well. So that way, if you're watching this early and you're preparing, keep these 5 guys top of mind, because they're all going to be available between the middle to late rounds, which are always critical rounds in your fantasy drafts. These are the top 5 guys that people are sleeping on, and guys that you need to start getting really familiar with and targeting right now for some good value as well as we get ready for the 2025 season. Hey, if you got value, once again, do me a solid and hit that like button, and check out some of these other videos that we have over here in the channel as we gear up for the NFL season. I'll be dropping a video once a week, and in the meantime and in between time, take care, God bless, peace.